You have spent countless hours on prepping, not just time, but money too. But I can almost guarantee there's one thing that you are missing from this. And when disaster strikes, and here's the scary part, this one thing, this one simple thing you're missing very well may cost you your life. And there's no point in prepping at all if you don't have this. All right, stick with me. I'm going to go through this and have you understand there's incredible details in this, but it's a very simple way to understand how we should be prepping. Because unfortunately, what do people do? I mean, they usually start off by hyper-focusing on stockpiling food. And yeah, obviously we have to have food and stockpile food. That's good. But they don't do it for the right reason, by the way. Because obviously food is essential, but they don't say, oh, food is essential, therefore I need to prep it. They know that there's crap going on in this world and things are getting worse and they don't want to starve. And so they focus on that, and it gives them this, honestly, this huge false sense of security. In other words, I'm very worried about what's coming. I don't want to starve. Let's go to the store. I want to stockpile this food, take it home, put it in my basement. Now I can relax and go back to sleep, right? That's the term we use. I know you know that term, that when you go back to sleep, you don't have to worry about this or have a care in the world. And honestly, in reality, when you do prep and prepare, you can relax a little bit. And that's the whole point of this. But simply stockpiling food won't do that. Or gear, because then you take the next step and you stockpile gear. I want this stove. I want this sleeping bag. I want this tent. And honestly, again, it's good to have these things, but you can't depend on just having these things to get you through. Then even more so, people hyper-focus on what? Weapons. Oh, weapons. And even like practicing and training a little bit to protect themselves. That's great. You should. That's still not it. By the way, we're going to take it to the next step further. But yeah, having all these things is excellent. And practice and training, which I drill all the time, is excellent too. You have to practice and train and drill. It's like this. I mean, obviously this is a very oversimplification, but I'm going to stockpile food. But if you don't have the mindset or the knowledge of how to use a can opener, you're still going to starve. So therefore you have to be able to, hopefully everybody can use a can opener, but hopefully you practice and train with all these different things you do get, because that way when things do happen, at the very least, know how to use the gear. That's the point of knowing how to use it. And I say all the time, quick sidebar, take your stuff, go outside, go camping, in your backyard and go practice and have fun with it. Enjoy it, by the way, especially if you have kids or grandkids and family, get them all involved. Turning it into a camping excursion, try out the gear. You want to have it done ahead of time so that way you know exactly what you're doing. So let me ask you real quick, put in the comments below before we continue. What do you think the number one thing is people do forget? And it isn't necessarily a tangible object like food, water, weapons. But what is it people are missing? Because again, I think most people, unfortunately, watching this video may not know exactly what it is. So again, I will say that practice and training, in my opinion, is the number one thing people are missing. This video is going to take you a step above that, by the way. It's very understand, because I want you to clearly understand that all the food and water and gear and all that stuff, without training, you're going to completely die. So here's what we need to look at, the missing link. I'll be honest with you, most people will ignore about what I'm about to say too, and that's actually the scary part. So to actually go through and explain or tell you exactly what it is, let me give you a couple ideas as we head in that direction. 2005, we're familiar with this. Hurricane Katrina hits, and there's a failure to evacuate because of what's coming. And the problem is, here's the scary part. People knew it was coming. Just like something's coming and you're stockpiling food and stuff, when it actually does hit, are you going to be able to react appropriately? People for Katrina did not. I lived in Florida for years, and how many times have we had evacuations for hurricanes? Yeah, you prepare ahead of time, and then I'll tell you, if you can do it work-wise, it's always best to leave a day or two early because the traffic jams leaving are absolutely horrible. But with Katrina, they did not prepare appropriately, even though they did prepare with food and water. In fact, FEMA, our lovely FEMA, still had supplies pre-positioned before it happened. A lot of residents, they live in a hurricane zone, had extra food and water. But the lack of coordination, the lack of truly understanding the evacuation, the routes, and the drills for that led to over 1,800 deaths in a city that was prepared. Why is that? I'll go ahead and give you a little foreshadow what's coming. They froze and made poor decisions because they didn't practice, or at least practice enough. And the thing is, they had food, water, and warning, but when the levees broke, it was too late. Or how about the campfire in Paradise, California? Are you familiar with this one in 2018? Major fire. The towns had multiple evacuation routes, evacuation plans, all the stuff mapped out ahead of time. Residents even had their go bags ready. Do you have a go bag? Had their vehicles ready to go, topped off with gas. The fire moved fast, which of course can be seriously problematic, but then panic set in. And when panic set in for these people, it paralyzed them. They didn't know what to do. Residents froze. They couldn't remember what they packed. Did you grab this? Did you grab that? Then they clogged the main roads trying to leave, not realizing there was other alternate routes they could have taken, even on their evacuation maps. And because of that, a lot of people died. 85 people, some of them even died in their cars as they're trying to get out. Very scary. So here's a quote from one person who survived that. It said, "We had practiced it once, but when the fire was coming, my mind just went blank." Do you know what I'm talking about with that? I completely forgot everything I'd planned ahead of time. All right, this all comes down to a psychological law called the Yerkes-Dodson law. This is fascinating. Not just fascinating, but please, here's what we're getting down to. It's the most important aspect you must understand as preppers, because on one level, we stockpile food and water and weapons. On the second level, we practice and train. Is that going to take us to the third level? When a real catastrophe hits, listen to me, panic sets in. Are you going to react like you should to save the life of you and your family? In other words, we get into a panic mode, and the more panic you get, the less logical you think, the less you actually react correctly in a situation, and that's actually one of the scariest things. Take a look at this chart. This defines perfectly the Yerkes-Dodson law. On one side, you'll see their level of performance, how well you can get your job done. This could be a job that you literally go to every day. This could be your job of trying to evacuate or deal with crap hits the fan. And this actually has a correlation with your level of arousal. Specifically, we're saying here how much you are truly aware of what's happening. These two together, well, look at this bell curve that happens because of this. And what we're always shooting for, by the way, is this. It's the optimal level. You want to be the most aware as you possibly can be, no matter the situations around you. But this doesn't always happen. In fact, a lot of people come way down here, sleep. And there's what we talk about, people going back to sleep. And I talk about the people who classify you as a fearmonger. You're a fearmonger. What they're really saying is, I want to go back to sleep. It's bedtime. And you have to say things to them like, go back in your little onesie and let us adults talk and figure things out. Unfortunately, some preppers are here too. Remember I said some preppers just want to get the food? Now can relax and go back to sleep. It's not obviously a true sleep. It's a metaphorical sleep. They want to be in a situation they don't have to worry about this at all. I mean, worry, yeah, concerned. How about that? We want to always have this concern to understand what's happening. Then even furthermore, some people take it up to boredom. In other words, they actually do have some level of performance, what's happening here, but prepping, who cares? But then they start to get mildly aware. And you start catching on with people like this, don't you? Because they'll start talking to you and be like, hey, I thought about prepping and I saw what's happening in the world right now. I don't know, should I be doing something about this? Have you ever had that conversation with someone? I think we all have. Then the more arousal you get, the more they come up to their optimal level. This is actually the simple stuff. That's not what the focus of this video is. But obviously we want to have this optimal level of arousal and understanding, therefore having your maximum performance in whatever comes. And for day to day, this is easy. But what people fail to understand is when crap hits the fan, it's not going to be day to day. Because first, we're going to have some stress. Of course you will. In fact, most people usually go back and forth on day to day between stress and optimal level. You get a little bit of stress. Stress is good for you, by the way, just a little bit anyway. It causes you to react and move. And then sometimes that stress turns to anxiety. Anxiety in itself, even medically speaking, obviously can be problematic in hyperventilation, and your level of performance goes down, not up, down. And that's why you see when you go from this optimal level to stress and anxiety, it's going downward, because you are literally having less of a level of performance, and obviously that's not what you want. But then when serious catastrophe strikes, and this is what people can't truly prepare for, panic sets in. Panic. When the panic sets in, you lose all your true mental faculties to be able to react to that situation. Your level of performance drops totally down to nothing, as you literally just run around with your, they say with your arms in the air screaming, we're all doomed, we're all going to die. And that, again, that's what people call you a fearmonger, because, well, they have anxiety about this and stress and panic about it. That's not why we do this. We don't do this for that. We do this so we don't have this panic mode. So I guess the question is, and maybe you already have an answer, but I'll tell you, how can you actually have it so that panic mode doesn't really kick in? So you actually have your level of consciousness stay where it's supposed to be in that optimum area, well, that's where the practice and training and drilling does come in. In itself, it's not going to fix this. So in other words, let's say this. Let's say in my house, I want to prepare for a blackout. Summer blackouts are a very real possibility this summer. Minor ones at least, possibility even, we're talking about some major ones. So what can you do? Your house has this thing called a main breaker. Shut it off, and now you could practice and train and be ready for this. That may not totally take away the panic of like a major grid down situation, but it's going to help, because guess what? You do that a few times this summer, and you know where your gear is, you know where your candles and lanterns are, you know where your solar generator is, you know how to connect it to your freezer, you know how to cook on your stove or otherwise without having electricity. Lots of things that you can do. And the more you practice with that, remember the first time you do it, you're like, oh my gosh, power outage, I don't have anything ready, I don't have any water, etc. But then after a few times, you're like, oh, this is kind of easy, isn't it? When we moved up here in the middle of nowhere, Michigan, we lost power all the time at the very beginning. We still do on occasion, but we went a couple weeks without power, And I had just installed my wood stove, so we'd go outside. We have a well pump, and at that time I didn't have a generator, a solar generator yet. I had a small one, but wasn't near enough to power my well pump. So we'd take turns getting a pot, going outside and putting, snow in a pot on our wood stove and to get water and drinking water and everything else. It was quite the ordeal. And we couldn't even go somewhere because we were snowed in. That's what took us 2 weeks also. It took us 10 days, I think, to finally dig out and to be able to leave. Now, power outages aren't scary, stressful at all. Now we have a generator, we have solar generators, we have everything in play to keep going. Now it's just an inconvenience. I'll take inconvenience over super stressful any day of the week. You know what I'm saying? But that's what we do. Nobody's ever going to say a major cataclysm is going to be easy, but it's something you can get used to. And that's where the panic doesn't set in. And that's the key. The more well-versed you are in just practicing all these things, doing this over and over again, it's not simply just practicing with weapons, but practice like there's an intruder in your house. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people will not be able to pull the trigger when they actually come face to face with someone. That is a sheer fact. It's not speculation, it's a fact. And you have to be able to practice and know that this may be a real situation. Our gun range here, the one I belong to, actually has tactical training. It's fantastic. Maybe you can do that. That's just one little thing of all the different things we need to focus on. And that's where the practice and training and drilling comes in. Practicing, training, and drilling will not necessarily save you, but practicing, training, and drilling so much that all of this becomes second nature to you, and you literally go through scenarios and pretend all this stuff is really happening, is going to make it so literally you possibly won't go all the way to panic mode. Maybe a little anxiety, maybe just stress, maybe even an optimal level. And that's exactly why we do train and drill and practice. Do you understand this? So psychologically speaking, people think I'm ready for this when they never practice at all because they're always at that non-stress optimal level. But any type of major event is going to pull you down into stress, anxiety, and panic. And we've seen through history, as I've shown you, people die because of this. I hope this video helps. If it has, put it in the comments below, because this is something we all have to work on, because guess what? Hate to say this, disasters are coming. That's being nice. We literally may see some major catastrophes coming, and we need to be prepared, and this is how we do it. Thanks for watching, everybody. As always, we'll see you next time.